Twilight discarded yet another book and looked at the clock. It was nearly 5:30.
Time to head back to the hospital.
She thought bleakly. They had been searching the library for hours, and none of the books had rendered the information they had hoped for. Behind her, Rainbow Dash sat on a literal tower of books, looming over the rest of their friends as she flipped irritably through a medical journal. Twilight might have commented on misusing books, but her frustration made her bite her tongue in case she said something she'd regret.
This is dumb,
Rainbow Dash declared, snapping her book shut.
half the words I can't understand, even with the dictionary you gave me, Twilight, and the other half doesn't say anything useful.
She tossed it away like a frisbee. Halfway between her and the floor, a lavender aura enveloped it and brought it gently to Twilight's own hooves.
I thought I told you not to do that.
Frustration frosted Twilight's words.
It deserves to go splat. It's useless.
These books aren't useless. Don't snap. Don't snap. Don't snap. Snapping at her won't help anything.
Twilight brought her hoof to her chest and pushed it away, breathing out and imagining her negative emotions leaving her body in that outward breath, just as Cadance had taught her. When she spoke again, her words were less like metal spikes.
They just don't happen to have the exact information we want at this exact time.
Like I said,
Rainbow Dash folded her forelegs.
useless.
Twilight did Cadance's exercise again. It was less effective the second time. Even less the third. Her fraying nerves must have shown on her face, for Applejack chose that moment to interject.
So how are we all gonna do this visiting thing?
We go to the hospital and see Pinky, same as last time.
Rarity rolled her eyes.
Thank you for that stunning piece of repartee, Rainbow Dash. But I believe Applejack was referring to the only 2 visitors at a time rule.
Oh,
Rainbow Dash frowned.
right.
We could draw straws to see who goes first.
Fluttershy suggested. It was babyish and simplistic, but in the dearth of the suggestions, the others agreed. Each wanted to be the first to get in to see Pinky, but was aware that this sentiment was shared by all. Not even Rainbow Dash could come up with a reason to shove her friends aside so she could go without looking like a total heel. Instead, Spike went to fetch a clutch of drinking straws from the kitchen. It took longer than Twilight expected, but eventually he brought them through to the circle of waiting mares.
And I get to go too this time.
He said pointedly. He had not been happy to return from the grocery run to find the library abandoned and the front door swinging on its hinges. In her haste and worry, Twilight had neglected to shut it behind her and now kept apologizing for worrying him. In the context of their lives, where being abducted from one's house by nefarious forces was an actual possibility, it did not do to leave one's friends uninformed about crises.
Sorry, Spike.
Twilight's ears plastered themselves against her skull in embarrassment. He waved a claw.
Stop apologizing, Twilight. You were panicked, I get it. Just do that calm down thing of Cadance and think of me next time, okay?
He held out the straws.
I blobbed some food coloring on the bottom. 2 are red, 2 are green, and 2 are blue. I figure we could decide which color goes first and then divide ourselves up.
Good thinking, Spike.
Twilight was impressed.
That's a mighty fine figure in Sugar Cube.
Applejack agreed.
You clever little...
Yeah, woohoo! Spike's a genius! Can we drop the straws and get going already?
Rainbow Dash had flown down from the top of her book mountain and now shifted from hoof to hoof in unconcealed impatience.
Don't get your tail in a bunch, Rainbow. We'll get there in plenty of time,
said Applejack.
How about we go red, green, and then blue, the order of the color spectrum?
Twilight suggested. She waited for Rainbow Dash to make some egghead comment, but it never came.
The 2 with red straws go first. The 2 with green straws go
You
second.
don't have to spill it out, Twilight. We're not dumb just because we're not eggheads like you.
Ah, there it was. Strangely, however, it was Rarity who snapped.
Rainbow Dash! Darling, while I understand you're worried about Pinky and eager for the off, that is no reason to keep being so rude. We are all worried about her, and we all wish to depart as quickly as possible, but we are not backbiting each other because it doesn't help.
A lock of mane fell into her eyes with the force of her inflection. Rainbow Dash lowered her eyes and then her head.
Yeah, I guess so. Sorry, Twilight.
It's okay, Rainbow.
Yet Rainbow Dash's hooves didn't stop shifting as every pony took a straw and looked at their color. She groaned when she saw hers.
Blue? Oh, nuts!
Red.
Said Twilight.
I guess we're first, Applejack.
Rarity held up her green-stained straw. Spike didn't quite manage to mask his pleased grin at being paired with her. Fluttershy held up a matching pair to Rainbow's.
Shall we go then?
Rarity asked, elevating over a waste paper basket in which they all deposited their straws.
No chance of a redraw?
Rainbow Dash muttered.
No? Didn't think so.
Big Mac hauled the traces on his cart into place and hitched himself up with practiced ease. Though he didn't have his sister's patter, he was still a good apple seller and had brought in quite a lot of money today. Granted, some of this was down to pretty mares wanting an excuse to talk to him, but he accepted their giggly overtures the same as he accepted any pony's conversation, with a few words and a languid, oblivious smile. As he trundled away, a gray shape bobbled across the rooftops that bordered the market square. With a squawk and a crash, several roof tiles fell onto the floor, closely followed by an upside-down pony. Given that he was the last seller to shut up shop and go home, Big Mac hurried over to see if his help was needed.
Miss Dew?
The gray mare in the center of the broken tiles wavered from side to side on her haunches. She shook her head, blinked a few times, and looked down at the mess.
Uh-oh.
Are you all right, Miss Dew?
I made a boo-boo.
She said dolefully.
What? Miss Dew, did you hit your head?
Her eyes were wrong. Neither one focused on him. Instead, they drifted out in opposite directions. Could a concussion do that? She stared at him with her left eye, though her right stared off into middle distance.
Huh?
The syllable lasted far too long. She definitely sounded like she had sustained some kind of head trauma. Ditsy Doo wasn't the brightest crayon in the box, but she was more articulate than this.
Do?
She echoed.
Do who?
Her high bubbly voice became a low-pitched rasp.
Ditsy, I think you should get on up here on my cart, and I'll take you to the hospital.
She looked behind her and then back at him.
Are you talking to me?
Again with the elongated words, an odd, almost cultish voice. Again with the drifting eyes. His worry deepened.
I'm not Ditsy.
She paused, frowning in thought.
Ditsy is some other pony. She isn't seen much. Gets lost easily. I'm Derpy.
She beamed proudly at him, lisping the words.
Derpy hooves.
Big Macintosh opened his mouth to respond.
Oh, hey. More of them.
Huh?
He turned to look where she was pointing. He caught sight of what looked like black worms crawling all over the apples he had left over from the market. Some even poked into the shiny red fruits, though they didn't seem to cause any actual damage.
What the? Oh!
A world of darkness erupted over him. As he submerged under the black wave, unable to yell or fight back, Ditsy's changed voice echoed in his ears.
Uh-oh. I just don't know what went wrong.
Nurse Redheart stroked Pinkie Pie's mane and shushed her gently. Tears flowed freely from the poor mare's eyes as she scrunched them tight against wave after wave of pain. When asked, she could not summon a breath to explain the specifics of where she hurt and how, so Redheart had nothing to tell Dr. Stable when he arrived.
Everything feels wrong.
Pinkie gritted as he asked the same question. She sucked in a high-pitched gasp as another spasm of agony shook her. Her legs convulsed, trying to pull into a fetal position while also splayed out, giving the appearance of a marionette on tangled strings and a very untalented puppeteer.
My bones are burning!
Dr. Stable's horn flared. He yanked over a trolley filled with items and selected one at a glance. Pinkie Pie's whole body jerked, and another strangled shriek left her. He found a vein in her foreleg and drove the hypothermic home. Moments later, her muscles relaxed. Her eyes drifted shut, though she was clearly fighting the sedative. She blinked, forcing herself to look at the two ponies beside her. Her eyeballs seemed to shiver for one long moment before they rolled up into her skull. For a moment, Redheart could have sworn a sheen flowed over them, making them appear briefly purple. As Pinkie's hold on her hoof slackened, Redheart breathed a sigh of relief. Not so Dr. Stable. He worked quickly and efficiently, dabbing a cotton bud at the dark gunge that leaked like tears from the corners of Pinkie's eyes and dripped out of her nose. He carefully placed this in a sealable polythene bag and levitated it above them.
I'm putting a rush on her test results,
He said briskly. Redheart bit her lip.
She was just talking to me, and then she screamed.
A tray of food lay on the floor, a lone cupcake upended in a sad little splatter. An apple and a heap of grapes were somewhere across the room, falling there from the convulsion started, and a flailing hoof knocked the tray from Redheart's grasp.
There was no warning.
The growths don't seem to have changed shape at all.
Dr. Stable observed, looking at the neatly written updates she had made on Pinkie's chart.
Did she say whether they hurt?
You heard her.
Redheart replied.
Everything feels wrong. She kept saying it. That and something about her bones burning over and over.
When she could speak at all, those screams would stay in Redheart's head for a long time. Dr. Stable frowned, though not at her.
This isn't like anything I've ever encountered before. The symptoms don't match, and it's all happening too fast. Even the head of Medimagic was stumped. His team are analyzing her sample he took from her right now.
Should she be quarantined?
Redheart asked nervously.
This might be a communicable disease.
He shook his head.
No, his immediate tests told us that whatever this is, it isn't transmissible.
Metamagic has a test for that?
You'd be surprised what Medimagic can do.
He said it carelessly, not intending to insult, but that carelessness made her bristle. She had been here 2 years before he arrived from Philadelphia, the big-shot doctor from the big city. She would be surprised what Medimagic could do?
You just said that this isn't like anything you've encountered before.
She pointed out.
What if it doesn't transmit in any way you've encountered before either?
Dr. Stable seemed to give her words serious consideration.
Have you been feeling sick?
What? Me? No!
And the itching on her back was psychosomatic. It was. She had checked in the break room when no pony was there to see her cave into paranoia.
Me neither, and one of the characteristics of this thing seems to be rapid and severe decline.
His eyes unfocused once more.
Then again, we don't know how long the incubation period is either.
He fell silent for a long, tense moment.
Doctor?
You're right.
He said gravely.
Until we know what this is, we should play it safe.
Far outside Ponyville, Inky Pie worked diligently on a shrinking pile of paperwork. Ever since her father gave up all accountancy tasks over to her, the rock farm had been bringing in more revenue than ever. The fact that they had struck a seam of gems the last quarters helped immensely, and even made it for a mess caused by that incompetent unicorn they had briefly employed a few months ago.
Not briefly enough.
Inky thought wryly. They went through temp workers like crazy, but that one had been a crazy pony who temped on her way through. Inky couldn't say she had been sorry to see the back of her. Some pony knocked on the door to her office. She looked up, spectacles sliding on the end of her snout.
Come in.
A tail and flank entered before the rest of her sister.
I brought you some dinner.
Blinky said, presenting her with a tray of food.
Otherwise, I know you'd forget to eat. Mama and Papa say they never see you at the table anymore.
Is it dinner time already?
Inky consulted the clock on the wall. Pony feathers. It was. When she got stuck into a task, she rarely came up for air until it was done. Present her with a sheet of numbers and she was as happy as, well, Pinkie. As usual, she felt the same old jolt of longing to see her other sister. As usual, she tamed it down. Knowing Pinkie was happy in Ponyville didn't make Inky miss her any less. It hurt that Mama and Papa never talked about her, as if their youngest daughter had ceased to exist. To them, she had. Some days, Inky thought, if it weren't for the photos Blinky had hoarded, their parents would have erased Pinkie's memory from existence entirely.
It isn't right.
She thought, though who was she to talk? She had chosen to stay and live by the rules of her family.
Are you nearly done?
Blinky asked. She was sweaty and dusty from the day in the quarry. Despite being a supervisor, she often picked up tools and joined those she was supposed to be bossing around. She never seemed to particularly enjoy her work, though, not the way Inky enjoyed her numbers. Inky sighed.
Almost.
I don't know how you can stay out here longer than you have to.
Blinky said unexpectedly. She waved a hoof at the desk, though the gesture seemed to encompass far more than just Inky's little shack of an office.
Doesn't it make you, I don't know, mad sometimes?
Mad?
Mad, angry, annoyed, wrathful, livid. Pick a synonym!
Blinky exclaimed.
Being stuck here on this damn farm, farming rocks, for the rest of our lives?
She shook her head.
Who the heck farms rocks?
Blinky.
Inky stood up and came around from behind her desk, but Blinky was already at the door.
Never mind.
She muttered, keeping her face averted.
It doesn't matter. It's dumb, I know. I'm just blowing off steam. Forget I asked.
Blinky.
Inky said sharply.
Are you thinking about leaving?
It wouldn't surprise her. Blinky had been antsy ever since that awful visit.
To do what?
She let out a small bitter laugh.
All I know is rocks. Rocks in the brain, rocks in the hooves, rocks in the blood.
She parroted their father's saying. The Pie family had been farming rocks around here for 7 generations.
All I know is rocks.
Blinky shook her head.
You know something? I really envy her.
Inky didn't have to ask who.
You could always do what she did.
Leave?
Blinky snorted.
Get shunned? I'm not that brave. But sometimes...
She paused before carrying on, as if she wasn't sure she would say what was truly on her mind.
Sometimes I wish this whole place would just disappear so we can start over. Try something else. Somewhere else. Anything but farming rocks.
Inky didn't say anything. She couldn't think what to say. Blinky retreated from the office, trotting across the open quarry back to the homestead where their parents were waiting for her.
Like I said, it's just me being dumb.
Above high, little black lines wriggled across the clouds.
What do you mean she's not here?
Rainbow Dash shouted. The grim receptionist from their last visit was as impassive as ever.
Miss Pinkamena Diane Pie has been moved to an isolation ward. She isn't receiving any visitors.
Pony feathers!
Whoa there, Philly!
Applejack grabbed her friend before she could try to vault the desk.
Let's get all the facts before we start making a hoo-ha.
An isolation ward?
Twilight echoed.
Why?
I'm not at liberty to say you aren't family.
Oh, for
Rainbow language!
Rarity barked.
We should let her family know.
Twilight thought abruptly.
They haven't a clue about any of this, if Pinkie is this sick.
She shook her head. How had this happened? Just yesterday, Pinkie Pie had been leaping around her table at Sugar Cube Corner, trying to get her to try her latest creation, a lemon surprise muffin.
What's the surprise?
Twilight had asked, unsure of the innocuous-looking thing laid before her. Pinkie had giggled.
Silly Philly! If I told you, it wouldn't be a very good surprise, would it?
The surprise had turned out to be a thick pool of lemony syrup at the center of the muffin. It dripped down Twilight's chin onto the tablecloth, making Pinkie laugh out loud.
Surprise!
Unbidden tears welled in Twilight's eyes. She tried to blink them away. Ever since she first entered Princess Celestia's school for the gifted unicorns, she had really felt truly helpless. Even when faced with the worst problems imaginable, she took comfort in the kernel of confidence that came of knowing hundreds upon hundreds of spells. Her default internal response to a crisis was still, use magic on it, even though after years in Ponyville, she rarely said it out loud anymore. She couldn't use magic to solve this. She was totally reliant on other ponies and their expertise to make sure her friend was okay. Now, to top it off, she couldn't even see Pinkie for reassurance anymore. She swiped a hoof across her eyes.
Twilight.
Spike said softly, perched on her back. He laid a palm on her mane, the way he used to when she was upset as a filly.
I'm fine, Spike.
She said huskily. She cleared her throat and asked the receptionist.
So there's no way we can see her?
No.
Short, blunt, inflexible. The gray mare's eyes burned into Twilight's like a laser. Twilight turned away.
Applejack, you've known Pinkie Pie a long time, right?
I guess. Though Rarity's known her nearly as long as I have. She chased us both around Ponyville until we said we'd be her friends when she first moved here. Why?
Twilight blinked back her tears before they could fall. She might not be able to do much, but she could do this.
Do you have contact details for her parents' rock farm?
Dr. Stable was about to don his breathing mask in preparation for entering the isolation unit, when Nurse Sweetheart jogged up to him. Given that she was a chubby mare who liked more than her fair share of chocolate, she was puffing hard when she reached him.
Test results for you.
She panted.
The isolation patient.
Already?
He accepted the clipboard and hastily surveyed it. Not all the results were here, but the rush job he had ordered had apparently worked on at least some of the samples. His eyebrows crept into his hairline. No wonder these results came back so quickly. They were nearly impossible to believe.
This can't be right.
What is it?
Asked Nurse Sweetheart.
No.
He said, instead of answering her.
It's impossible.
Dr. Stable?
He raised his eyes at her.
Ink?
Excuse me?
These results say that substance I collected from her eyes is ink.
Sweetheart's forehead wrinkled in consternation.
Ink?
He flipped through the papers. Yes, it definitely said ink. One of the lab technicians had even attached a post-it note to the bottom asking whether this was the result of a unicorn spell gone wrong. There were recorded cases in which teenage unicorns and unpracticed spellcasters accidentally caused their bodies to spew forth all sorts of awful things. Frogs, beetles, lizards, tadpoles, and even, in one instance, solid gold coins. Yet, Pinkie Pie was an earth pony, and according to all accounts given by herself and Mrs. Cake when they arrived, she had worked at Sugar Cube Corner on every day this week and only briefly had prolonged contact with Fluttershy yesterday while outdoors in the open air, away from any unicorns. He gave the clipboard back to Nurse Sweetheart.
If any other results arrive, page me immediately. Don't come into the ISO unit. I'm going to go check on the patient.
Nurse Sweetheart's expression remained worried as he pushed open the heavy door, which popped like a refrigerator when its seal gave way. There was a corridor in between the isolation unit and the rest of Ponyville General, kept clean by fictitious janitors even though they rarely had cause to use the unit. Pinkie Pie had been their first resident in over 6 months. A line of 4 beds sat against the wall. None of them were occupied, though the covers of the last one had been thrown back.
Pinkie?
Dr. Stable called anxiously. The only way in and out of the unit was through a door that he had just used. A window on the other wall provided light, but didn't open. Instead, a ventilation unit kept the atmosphere at a controlled temperature. He had supervised Pinky's transportation down here only a short while ago. The sedative he had given her could have not worn off yet. It had been infused with Medimagic and was more effective with fewer side effects than regular anesthetic. In one corner of the room floated a gently blurbling ball of security magic, designed to keep an eye on the room's occupant and raise the alarm if their vitals plummeted or if they tried to leave. His eyes scanned the room. And there, crouched on top of a tall cabinet that housed all the medicine for this unit, was Pinkie Pie. Her entire musculature seemed locked in place, as if one more twitch could make her fall. With all 4 legs tucked under her like that, the lumps on her back brushed the ceiling. Even those ugly things seemed to have stopped moving. She was very, very still.
How in Celestia's name did she get up there?
Dr. Stable wondered. He hurried over, Horn reacting instinctively at the sight of a patient in danger.
Pinkie? Pinkie Pie.
She didn't answer.
Pinkamena Diane Pie.
Warily, the pink pony turned her head. Her expression was one of such deep-rooted fear that Dr. Stable barely recognized her. Pinkie Pie had 1,000 varieties of smile, but her other emotions were like crayon drawings compared to the masterful painting. Simple, sincere, and guileless.
Pinkie, why are you up there?
Dr. Stable asked, trying to be gentle and audible at the same time.
Why do you keep calling me that?
She replied angrily. As her face had been barely recognizable, what came out of her mouth belonged to a different pony altogether. It was her voice, but the inflection wasn't like her at all. She clutched at her head.
No. No, 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 no!
Pinkie, we need to get you down from there before you hurt yourself.
This is wrong. 1 + 1 = 2. Add 2 ones, and you don't get just 1. Can't squeeze blood from a stone. Can't make something from nothing. Can't fit 1,000 books into 91 spaces.
Pinkie Pie.
Who is that?
Pinkie braced her forehooves and leaned her neck out to glare down at him.
Is that her? Is that me? I can see pieces, but not everything. And the pieces aren't even in the right order. Some of them might have been left behind. What am I missing? What am I missing?
She shrieked.
They didn't bring all of me across. How do I know this me is really me? How do I know?
Dr. Stable didn't understand what she was talking about. How could he? It was all nonsense. Had her mysterious illness affected her mental faculties? Was this the result of the Medimagic interacting with her changed body chemistry? There would be enough time to ponder that later. Right now, his immediate concern was getting her off the cabinet before she fell.
Pinkie, I'm going to use my magic to get you down, okay?
What?
She blinked at him.
You can't wink out. There isn't enough room up here for both of us.
Wink out. Hold steady now.
His horn flared with telekinesis, honed by years of deftly handling sharp implements and lifting comatose bodies. It wrapped around Pinkie. She started to struggle, panic infusing her face, until her back brushed against the ceiling and her protest developed into an agonizing screech.
Where am I? No! 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 Please! Don't say I lost them too!
I'm going to bring you down now.
Let me go!
Here we go.
Let me go! Don't you see? Don't you see this is all wrong? I'm not meant to be here. I was never meant to be here. This is all wrong. You can't force 2 things into one. However much you want to, the one breaks. And if I replace her, it's murder.
She hissed the words as if she had never said them before.
Won't someone please send me back? Please, please, please. I don't want to be here. Bad things will happen if I stay here. I just know it.
And down.
Dr. Stable set Pinkie's hooves on the floor, but he hesitated before releasing his magic. She was irrational. Plus, if she had somehow managed to scramble up the cabinet under her own power when she had been unconscious, who knew what else she could do?
Code Amber ID Stable.
He said loudly. The ball of security magic brightened to orange and became whooping.
What's that?
Pinkie demanded.
What did you do?
I'm just bringing some ponies to help you, Pinky.
Who is that?
She cried. Minutes later, 2 porters entered the isolation unit. Both wore gas masks, just like him. Wordlessly, they stood either side of Pinkie Pie as he released his telekinetic hold on her. He tensed in case she sprang up at him, but she cowered away and put her forehooves over her head.
I want to go home.
And then it shifted. A ripple swept over her like a breeze through a field of waving corn. When it passed, she raised her head, looking around with interest.
I switched rooms?
She asked brightly.
How come?
Dr. Stable gasped.
Pinky?
Hi, Doc. What's up?
Pinkie Pie snickered to herself.
What's up, Doc? Oh, kill me sometimes.
When Twilight put down the payphone, every pony was aware of the change in her posture. She had started the call with ears flat. They pricked halfway through as she spoke to whoever was on the other end of the line. Always a sign of something capturing her interest. Subsequently slamming down the phone and demanding a fresh coin without explaining was such an un-Twilight behavior that even Rainbow Dash was shocked into silence. Twilight had dialed another number and engaged in a cryptic conversation that had made her ears flatten and her face register a kind of horror that made the hair stand up along every pony's spine. Her friends now waited impatiently for whatever she had to tell them.
Come on, come on, come on! What's wrong?
Rainbow Dash thought, her hooves twitching.
The rock farm.
Twilight said, disbelieving.
It's not there.
Huh?
Applejack frowned.
What do you mean, not there? It's a rock farm, Sugar Cube. Those don't move.
Well, this one did.
Rainbow Dash was unimpressed.
Seriously, Twilight? That's a lousy time to be making jokes?
Her knowledge of her friend kicked in as she reached the end of her sentence. Twilight would not be making jokes like that, especially at a time like this.
You're not joking, are you?
Twilight shook her head. She looked stunned.
The number Applejack gave me put me through to a pony in a neighboring village. They said they'd never heard of any rock farm in that area, nor any Pie family. They said there has never been any rock farm anywhere near there, and that it was a stupid idea anyhow. Who farms rocks? So I called the Equestrian Topography Center in Canterlot.
Top what?
Rainbow Dash interrupted.
They keep maps of all Equestria.
And you just happen to know their phone number by heart?
I helped them map out part of the previously uncharted areas of the Everfree Forest after we defeated Nightmare Moon, and I have an eidetic memory, but that's not important.
Twilight said dismissively.
The point is, they agreed. There is not, nor has there ever been, a rock farm belonging to a family named Pie. Not there and not anywhere in Equestria.
What?
The explanation echoed at her in several voices.
But that's preposterous.
Rarity protested.
We know it exists. Why, that brood of a showmare Trixie went to work there for a while. She showed us the pictures.
I know that, but look, I don't know how to explain it.
Twilight shook her head.
They were all really insistent.
Rainbow Dash scowled.
Well, they were all wrong. I've been to Pinky's farm.
At Twilight's curious look, she shrugged.
I went there with her once, when her mom was sick a few years ago. What?
So you met them?
Twilight asked urgently.
Well, duh.
For a moment, Rainbow Dash's face flickered into sympathy as she recalled Pinky's frozen face and the bedroom door that remained shut even when she called to the occupant within. It was one of the few times she had ever seen Pinky genuinely sad, and it had stuck with her.
It wasn't pretty. Her mom didn't want to see her and her dad was a dud, but her sisters were pretty cool.
Then this all makes even less sense.
Twilight threw up her forehooves.
Why would the Topography Center lie? The records are second to none. Those can't be wrong.
Whatever.
Rainbow Dash's wings vibrated with pent-up frustration at her inability to do anything. She felt like she had been cooped up all day. Actually, she had been cooped up all day. Added to her worry over Pinky, it royally sucked. Fury and frustration tightened in her stomach like she had swallowed hot metal that had solidified in her gut. She needed to do something, not just sit around waiting for something to happen on its own. That was not how she was wired. Rainbow Dash, the fastest Pegasus in all Equestria, did not just wait for things to happen, she made them happen.
You know what? Rock Farm isn't far from here if you're flying. I'll go tell them Pinky's in the hospital.
At least then she could be doing something. Inactivity was her worst nemesis along with math and alfalfa. And if she got into a flaming argument with Pinky's parents, then well, so much the better. She would rather argue with some pony she barely knew than explode at her friends. And right now, she was worried that that was exactly what might happen if she stayed with them.
Rainbow Dash, wait!
Applejack started.
You guys can wait. I'm going.
With that, she cantered away, turning the last few feet into a defiant glide and into the sky at an ever-increasing speed. She could almost convince herself the wetness on her cheeks was just from facing into the wind. Almost.